It was a warm Saturday evening in late September. The kind of evening where the sun sets slow and golden, painting everything in soft orange light. A beautiful wedding was happening at a large farmhouse just outside of town. White tents covered the green grass. Fairy lights hung from the trees. Guests in their finest clothes laughed and talked while soft music played in the background, down at one of the corner tables. Far from the dancing and the noise sat a man. He was somewhere around 45 years old. His hair had gone gray at the sides. His hands were rough, the kind of hands that told you he worked hard for a living. He wore a simple dark suit that looked like he hadn't worn it in years. It probably sat in the back of his closet, waiting for occasions like this. He wasn't talking to anyone. He wasn't smiling. He just sat there with a glass of water in front of him, watching the celebration from a distance. Every now and then, someone would wave at him or nod, and he would nod back politely. But he never got up. He never joined in. His name doesn't really matter for the story. What matters is what he carried inside him. And what he carried was heavy. Very heavy. The wedding was for his cousin's daughter. He almost didn't come. He had told his family he was busy, that work was too much, that he couldn't take the time off. But his mother had called him. She was 82 years old and still had that voice that could make him feel like a child again. She told him family was important. She told him he had been hiding long enough. She told him she missed him. So he came. But he promised himself he would stay only for a couple of hours. Just enough to show his face, say hello, and leave before anyone asked too many questions. The reception was going beautifully. The bride and groom had their first dance. Speeches were made. People laughed and cried and hugged each other. Everything was perfect, until at WASN single quotes T. About 2 hours into the reception, there was some commotion near the main tent. The wedding planner, a young woman with a headset and a clipboard, was speaking quickly into her phone. Her face looked stressed. Something had gone wrong. A few minutes later, the groom's father stood up and walked to the microphone. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile people give when they're trying to hide bad news. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we have a small situation. Our wonderful pianist, who was supposed to play for us tonight, has had a family emergency. He won't be able to make it." A murmur spread through the crowd. The bride looked disappointed. She had been looking forward to the live piano music all week. "Now, we do have a backup playlist," the groom's father continued, "so the party will go on. But if anyone here knows how to play piano and would like to help us out, we would be very grateful." He said it as a joke almost. Nobody really expected someone to volunteer. These things don't happen in real life, right? But then something unexpected happened. An older woman at one of the front tables raised her hand slightly. She was the man's aunt. She had known him since he was a little boy. "Wait," she said loud enough for people nearby to hear. "What about him?" She pointed toward the corner table. Toward the man sitting alone. Heads turned. Eyes followed her finger. The man froze. His heart dropped into his stomach. "He used to play," his aunt continued. "He was incredible. One of the best I ever heard." The groom's father looked interested. "Really, sir? Do you play piano?" Every eye in the room was now on the man. He could feel the weight of their stares. His throat went dry. His hands, those rough and tired hands, began to shake under the table. He shook his head slowly. "No," he said quietly. "I don't play anymore." There was a moment of silence. People looked at each other, unsure what to do. His cousin, the mother of the bride, walked over to his table. She crouched down beside him and spoke softly. "Please," she said. "It would mean so much. You don't have to play for long. Just 1 or 2 songs. For her. For the bride." He looked at his cousin. He could see the hope in her eyes. He could feel the entire room waiting for his answer. But inside him, something was screaming. A voice that had been screaming for over 20 years. No, never again. You promised yourself. Never again. He shook his head once more. I'm sorry, he said. I can't. His cousin looked hurt, but nodded. She stood up and walked back to the main table. The groom's father made another joke about using the playlist after all, and slowly the attention shifted away from the man, but not completely. People whispered. They glanced at him when they thought he wasn't looking. Who was this man who refused to help? Why wouldn't he play? What was his story? He didn't care what they thought. He couldn't explain it to them. He could barely explain it to himself. The truth was, there was a time in his life when music was everything to him. There was a time when the piano was not just an instrument, but an extension of his soul. He had started playing when he was 5 years old. By the time he was 10, his teachers said he had a gift. By the time he was 20, he was performing in front of hundreds of people. By 30, he had played in some of the most beautiful concert halls in the country. People called him a genius. They said his fingers created magic. They said listening to him play was like watching someone speak directly to heaven. And for a while, he believed them. He believed he was meant for this. That music was his purpose. That nothing could ever take it away from him. But life has a way of teaching us hard lessons. Life has a way of taking the things we love most and turning them into the things we fear. And that is exactly what happened to him 20-2 years ago. Something broke inside him. Something so painful that even now, sitting at this wedding, he couldn't bring himself to think about it fully. The memories would come in flashes. A small face. A laugh that sounded like bells. A Sunday morning. A song they used to play together. And then silence. The worst kind of silence. The kind that never goes away. After that day, he made a promise to himself. He would never touch a piano again. He packed away his music sheets. He sold his beautiful grand piano that had sat in his living room for years. He moved to a different town, got a job working with his hands, and tried to forget. And for 22 years, he kept that promise. Until tonight. He looked across the room at the grand piano sitting near the dance floor. It was a gorgeous instrument, black and shiny under the fairy lights. The keys were untouched, waiting for someone to bring them to life. For a moment, just a brief moment, he felt something stir inside him. A tiny spark. A whisper of something he thought had died long ago, but he pushed it down. He always pushed it down. He finished his glass of water, checked his watch, and decided it was time to leave. He had done what he came to do. He had shown his face. Now it was time to go back to his quiet life, his small apartment, his routine that kept the memories at bay. He stood up and reached for his jacket. And that's when he saw her. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, was walking toward his table. She had curly brown hair and big curious eyes. She was wearing a white flower girl dress with tiny pink ribbons. She looked like an angel. She stopped right in front of him and looked up. "Mister," she said in a small, sweet voice, "are you the piano man?" He stared at her. His heart stopped, because for just a second, she reminded him of someone. Someone he had been trying to forget for 22 years, and in that second, everything changed. The little girl stood there looking up at him with those big, curious eyes. She was waiting for an answer. The whole world seemed to stop for a moment. "Mister," she asked again, "are you the piano man?" He opened his mouth to say no, to say she had the wrong person, to say he was nobody special, just a man trying to leave a party. But the words got stuck somewhere in his throat. She reminded him so much of her. The curly hair, the way she tilted her head when she asked a question, the innocence in her voice. It was like looking at a ghost. A beautiful, painful ghost. "I used to be," he finally said. His voice came out rough, like he hadn't used it in a long time. "A long time ago." The little girl smiled. "My grandma said you play really pretty. She said you made people cry with your music. The good kind of crying." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just looked at her. "Will you play for me?" she asked. "I never heard a real piano before. Only on videos." His chest tightened. He could feel something breaking open inside him. Something he had kept locked away for more than 2 decades. He needed to get out of here. He needed to leave before it all came flooding back. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said softly. "I don't play anymore." The little girl's face fell. Not in an angry way, just disappointed. Like when you tell a child there's no more ice cream left. "Why not?" she asked. Why not? Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. He crouched down so he was at her eye level. Up close, he could see a tiny smudge of chocolate on her cheek. Probably from the wedding cake. It made her look even more like a child. Even more innocent. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "people stop doing things they love because it hurts too much to remember." The little girl thought about this for a moment. Then she nodded like she understood, even though she probably didn't. Not really. How could she? She was only 5 or 6 years old. She hadn't lived long enough to know that kind of pain. He hoped she never would. Her mother called her from across the room, and the little girl turned to go. But before she left, she looked back at him one more time. "I hope you play again someday, mister," she said. "I think it would make you happy." And then she was gone, skipping back to her mother like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something had cracked open inside him that he couldn't close again. He sat back down at his table. His legs felt weak. His hands were trembling. He wasn't going to leave just yet. He couldn't. Not like this. He stared at the piano across the room, and for the first time in 22 years, he let himself remember that it started when he was 5 years old. His mother had bought an old second-hand piano from a neighbor who was moving away. She put it in the corner of their small living room, mostly as decoration. She didn't know how to play. Neither did his father. But something about that piano called to him. He would sit on the bench for hours, pressing the keys, listening to the sounds they made. At first, it was just noise. Random notes with no meaning. But slowly, he started to figure things out. He learned which keys sounded good together. He learned how to make simple melodies dot. By the time he was 7, his parents realized he had something special. They saved up money and got him lessons with a real teacher. The teacher was an old woman who had once played in concert halls across the world. She was strict and demanding, but she saw something in him. A gift, she called it. "You have magic in your fingers," she told him once. Don't ever waste it. He didn't. He practiced every single day, hours and hours. While other kids were playing outside, he was at the piano. While other teenagers were going to parties, he was perfecting his technique. Music was everything to him. It was his identity, his purpose, his reason for getting up in the morning. By his early 20s, he was performing professionally. Small venues at first, then bigger ones. People started to notice him. Critics wrote about him. They said he played with emotion that most musicians couldn't even dream of. They said when he sat at a piano, it was like watching someone bare their soul. And then, at 28 years old, he met her. Not a woman. Not a girlfriend. Something far more precious. His daughter. She came into his life like a sunrise. Unexpected and beautiful. Her mother and he weren't together for long, but she gave him the greatest gift he would ever receive. A tiny baby girl with big eyes and a curious spirit. From the moment he held her in his arms, everything changed. Music was no longer the most important thing in his life. She was. He cut back on touring. He turned down big opportunities. People in the industry thought he was crazy. Why would he give up his rising career for a child? But he didn't care. He wanted to be there. He wanted to watch her grow. He wanted to be her father in every sense of the word. And she grew up beautiful, smart, kind, full of wonder. And she loved music just like he did. He noticed it when she was 3 years old. She would sit beside him on the piano bench and watch his fingers move across the keys. Her little face would light up with amazement. She would clap her hands and laugh with joy. By the time she was 4, she wanted to learn. So he taught her. Simple songs at first. Nursery rhymes. Little melodies that made her giggle with pride when she got them right. Every Sunday morning became their special time. Just the two of them at the piano. Father and daughter. Playing together. Laughing together. Creating something beautiful together. Those Sunday mornings were the happiest moments of his life. By the time she was 6, she was already better than kids twice her age. Her little fingers danced across the keys like they were born to do it. She had the gift, too. Maybe even more than he did. He signed her up for her first recital. It was a small event at a local community center. Nothing fancy. Just a few kids performing for their families. But to her, it was the biggest day of her life. She practiced for weeks. She picked out a special dress. She talked about it every single day. "Daddy, will you be proud of me?" She asked the night before. He hugged her tight. "I'm already proud of you," he said. "I'm always proud of you." She smiled that beautiful smile of hers, the one that could light up any room. The next morning, they got in the car to drive to the recital. It was a cold day in early spring. The roads were wet from rain the night before. She sat in the back seat, humming the song she was going to play, her little fingers moving in the air like she was practicing on an invisible piano. He looked at her in the rearview mirror and smiled. She was so happy, so excited, so full of life. He didn't see the truck coming. It happened so fast. One moment, everything was normal. The next moment, there was noise and glass and spinning and darkness. When he woke up in the hospital 3 days later, they told him she was gone, his little girl, his Sunday morning partner, his reason for everything. Gone. Just like that. The world didn't make sense after that. Nothing made sense. He went through the motions of living, but he wasn't really alive. He was just existing, a hollow shell of the man he used to be. He never touched a piano again. He couldn't. Every time he saw one, he heard her laugh. He saw her little fingers on the keys. He remembered those Sunday mornings that would never come again. So he ran. He sold everything. He moved far away. He got a job where he could work with his hands and not think. He built walls around his heart so high that no one could get in. For 22 years. Those walls held. But tonight, sitting in this wedding reception, watching a little girl skip away in her flower dress, he felt those walls starting to crack. And for the first time in a very long time, he didn't know if he had the strength to rebuild them. He sat at that corner table for what felt like hours. The wedding continued around him. People danced. People laughed. People lived their lives like nothing had happened. And for them, nothing had. They didn't know what was going on inside his head. They didn't know about the storm of memories crashing through him. The backup playlist was playing now. Pop songs and love ballads filled the air. It was fine. It was enough for a wedding. But every now and then, he would glance at the grand piano sitting silent and untouched near the dance floor. It looked lonely somehow. like it was waiting for someone, like it was waiting for him. He shook his head and looked away. No, he wasn't going to do this. He had made it 22 years without playing. He wasn't going to break that promise now. Not here. Not in front of all these strangers. His mother found him about 30 minutes later. She walked slowly with her cane, her silver hair pinned up nicely for the occasion. She had always been a beautiful woman, even at 82. Strong, graceful, the kind of woman who survived hard times and came out the other side with her dignity intact. She sat down in the chair next to him without asking permission. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said softly. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She already knew. That little girl, his mother continued. The flower girl. She came up to me a few minutes ago. Asked me about you. Asked why the piano man looked so sad. His jaw tightened. I'm not sad, he said. I'm fine. His mother gave him that look. The one she had been giving him since he was a little boy. The one that said she could see right through him. You haven't been fine in 22 years, she said gently. And that's okay. What happened to you? What happened to her? No parent should ever have to go through that. But sweetheart, you can't keep running forever. I'm not running, he said. I'm just living my life. Are you? She asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you stopped living a long time ago. You're just going through the motions. Wake up, go to work, come home, go to sleep. That's not living. That's surviving. He felt something twist in his chest. She wasn't wrong. He knew she wasn't wrong. But what was he supposed to do? How was he supposed to move on from something like that? How do you keep living when the best part of your life is gone? I don't know how, he admitted quietly. I don't know how to be anything else anymore. His mother reached over and took his hand. Her skin was thin and soft, but her grip was still strong. You start small, she said. You take one step, then another. You don't have to run. You just have to move. She squeezed his hand once, then stood up slowly. I'm going to go sit with your aunt, she said. But think about what I said. And maybe think about that piano over there. It's been waiting for you for a long time. She walked away, leaving him alone with his thoughts once again. He stared at the piano. It really was a beautiful instrument. Black and shiny, with keys that looked like they had never been touched. The fairy lights above it cast a soft glow, making it look almost magical. For a moment, just a brief moment, he imagined himself sitting there. He imagined his fingers on the keys. He imagined the sound of music filling the room. He imagined feeling something again, something other than pain. But then the fear came rushing back. What if he couldn't do it anymore? What if he had forgotten how to play? What if he sat down and nothing came out? What if he broke down in front of all these people? The fear was too strong. The walls were too high. He decided it was time to leave. For real this time. He would say goodbye to his mother, congratulate the bride, and slip out before anyone else could ask him about the piano. He stood up and started, walking toward the exit. That's when the little girl appeared again. She stepped right into his path, looking up at him with those big brown eyes. Her flower girl dress was a little wrinkled now, and there was a grass stain on the hem. She had clearly been running around and playing like kids do at weddings. You're leaving? She asked. She sounded disappointed. He nodded. It's getting late, sweetheart. I have a long drive home. But you didn't play the piano yet, she said. I told you I don't play anymore. The little girl tilted her head, thinking about this. Then she reached out and grabbed his hand. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his big rough ones. Come with me, she said. I want to show you something. Before he could protest, she was pulling him across the room. She was surprisingly strong for such a small thing. Or maybe he was just too tired to resist. Either way, he found himself being dragged through the crowd of wedding guests toward the corner where the piano sat. She stopped right in front of it and let go of his hand. "This is a piano," she said matter-of-factly, like she was teaching him something new. "It makes music." Despite everything, he felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Almost a smile. "I know what it is," he said. "Then why won't you play it?" He sighed and crouched down to her level, just like he had done before. Looking at her up close, he noticed she had a small scar on her chin, probably from a fall. Kids were always falling and getting back up. They were resilient that way. "It's complicated," he said. "Grown-ups always say that," she replied. "But my mom says sometimes things are only complicated because we make them complicated." He blinked. That was surprisingly wise for a 5-year-old. "Your mom sounds smart," he said. "She is. She's a teacher." The little girl paused, then added, "She also says that being scared is okay, but letting scared stop you is not okay." He stared at her. This tiny little girl was saying things he had needed to hear for 22 years. Things he had been too afraid to admit to himself. "What's your name?" he asked. "I'm not supposed to tell strangers my name," she said seriously. Then she grinned. "But you're not a stranger. You're the piano man. My grandma told me all about you." He laughed. Actually laughed. It was a strange sound coming from his own mouth. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed like that. "Okay, fair enough," he said. "So what do you want me to do?" The little girl pointed at the piano bench. "Sit there. And then? And then you play? Just one song. For me, please?" She put her hands together like she was praying and gave him the biggest puppy dog eyes he had ever seen. It was the kind of look that could melt anyone's heart. The kind of look that was impossible to say no to. He looked at the piano, then back at the little girl, then at the piano. Again, that 20-2 years. 22 years of silence. 22 years of running and hiding and pretending that part of him didn't exist anymore. Maybe his mother was right. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to take one small step. He stood up slowly. His legs felt like they were made of stone. His heart was pounding so hard, he could hear it in his ears. The little girl clapped her hands with excitement. "You're going to do it?" He didn't answer. He wasn't sure he could speak. He walked toward the piano bench. Each step felt like a mile. Each step brought back more memories. He could see his daughter sitting beside him. He could hear her laughter. He could feel her small shoulder pressed against his arm as they played together. He sat down on the bench. The room seemed to go quiet around him. Or maybe that was just in his head. He couldn't tell anymore. He looked down at the keys. 88 of them. Black and white. Waiting, his hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. The little girl came and stood beside him. She didn't say anything. She just watched, waiting to see what would happen next. He took a deep breath. And then, for the first time in 22 years, he lifted his hands toward the keys. His fingers hovered over the keys, just an inch away. So close he could almost feel the cool ivory beneath his fingertips. But he couldn't move. It was like his hands were frozen in mid-air, held back by invisible chains made of fear and grief and 22 years of silence. The little girl stood beside him, watching, waiting. She didn't rush him. She didn't say a word. She just stood there with her hands clasped in front of her, patient as can be. Around them, the wedding reception continued. Music played from the speakers. People talked and laughed. Most of them hadn't even noticed that he was sitting at the piano. They were too busy with their own conversations, their own lives, but a few people had noticed. His mother was watching from her table, her hands pressed together near her heart. His cousin, the mother of the bride, had stopped mid-conversation and was looking his way. A small group of guests near the dance floor had turned to see what was happening. He could feel their eyes on him. It made his skin crawl. What was he doing? Why had he sat down here? This was a mistake. A terrible mistake. He started to pull his hands back, started to stand up, started to run away, like he always did. But then the little girl did something unexpected. She reached out and placed her tiny hand on top of his. "It's okay to be scared," she whispered. "My mom says brave people are scared too. They just do the thing anyway." He looked at her, this little girl who didn't know him, who didn't know his story, who didn't know about the accident, or the loss, or the 22 years of silence. And yet somehow she understood exactly what he needed to hear. He thought about his daughter. She would have been 28 years old now. Maybe she would have been married. Maybe she would have had children of her own. Maybe she would have become a famous pianist, traveling the world and sharing her gift with everyone. Or maybe she would have done something completely different. Maybe she would have been a teacher or a doctor or an artist. He would never know. That future had been stolen from both of them on a rainy morning 22 years ago. But right now, in this moment, there was a different little girl standing beside him. A little girl who just wanted to hear him play. A little girl who believed in him even though she had no reason to. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all he needed. He took a deep breath. Then another. Then one more dot, and then he pressed a single key dot. The note rang out clear and pure. It cut through the noise of the reception like a beam of light through darkness. A simple sound. Just one note. But to him, it felt like the whole world had shifted. A few more heads turned. The conversations nearby got a little quieter. He pressed another key. Then another. His fingers were stiff and clumsy. They didn't move the way they used to. 22 years without practice had taken their toll. But the memory was still there. Somewhere deep inside him, the music was still alive. He started playing something simple. Just a basic melody. Testing the waters. Seeing if he still remembered. How about the notes came out hesitant at first. Uncertain. Like a child learning to walk again after a long illness. But with each passing second, something began to change. His fingers started to remember. His hands started to relax. The music started to flow. And then, without even thinking about it, he began to play her song. It was a piece by a French composer. A gentle, dreamy melody that floated through the air like moonlight on water. It had been his daughter's favorite. She used to ask him to play it every Sunday morning. She would close her eyes and sway back and forth, lost in the beauty of it. He hadn't played this song in 22 years. He hadn't even listened to it. It was too painful, too full of memories. But now, sitting at this piano with a little girl beside him, the song came pouring out of him like water from a broken dam. Every note carried a memory. Every chord held a piece of his heart. The reception had gone completely silent now. The DJ had turned off the speakers. Every single person in the room was watching him. But he didn't notice. He was somewhere else entirely. He was back in his old living room on a Sunday morning. He was sitting at his grand piano with his daughter beside him. He was happy. Tears started rolling down his cheeks. He didn't try to stop them. He couldn't have even if he wanted to. 22 years of grief and pain and loneliness came flooding out through those tears. Through that music. Through every single note. His mother was crying too. She had her hand over her mouth, watching her son play for the first time in over 2 decades. She remembered how much he had loved music. She remembered how much he had lost. And she understood what this moment meant. The bride was crying. The groom was holding her hand, his own eyes wet. They didn't know the full story. They didn't know why this man had refused to play. But they could feel it. Everyone in the room could feel it. There was something happening here that went beyond music. Something raw and real and deeply human. The little girl had climbed onto the bench beside him. She sat there quietly, watching his fingers dance across the keys. Her eyes were wide with wonder. She had never seen anything like this before. She had never heard anything like this before. He played and played. The song built and swelled, filling every corner of the room. It was beautiful and sad and hopeful all at once. It was a goodbye and a hello, an ending and a beginning. As he reached the final notes, he thought about his daughter one last time. He pictured her face, her smile, her laugh. He pictured her sitting beside him on that piano bench, her little fingers trying to keep up with his. I miss you, he thought. I miss you every single day. But I think maybe it's time for me to start living again. I think maybe that's what you would have wanted. The last note faded into silence. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The whole room was suspended in time. And then the applause started. It began with one person clapping. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room was on their feet, applauding and cheering and wiping tears from their eyes. The sound was overwhelming. It washed over him like a wave. He sat there at the piano, his hands trembling, his face wet with tears. He didn't know what to do. He had forgotten what this felt like. The connection, the emotion, the power of music to touch people's hearts. The little girl tugged on his sleeve. He looked down at her. That was magic, she said softly. Her eyes were shining. Real magic. He smiled through his tears. A real smile. The first real smile in 22 years. Thank you, he whispered. But he wasn't just thanking her. He was thanking everyone. His mother for making him come tonight. His cousin for asking him to play. The universe for putting this little girl in his path. And somewhere, deep in his heart, he was thanking his daughter too. For the years they had together. For the music they had shared. For the love that never died, even when everything else did. The bride came rushing over and hugged him. The groom shook his hand. People he had never met were patting him on the back and telling him how beautiful that was. His mother made her way through the crowd and wrapped her arms around him. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Some things don't need words. He held her tight and closed his eyes. For the first time in 22 years, the weight on his chest felt a little lighter. For the first time in 22 years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. The little girl was still sitting on the piano bench, swinging her legs back and forth. Will you play another one? She asked hopefully. He laughed. That strange, unfamiliar sound that was slowly becoming familiar again. Maybe, he said. Maybe I will. And somewhere up above, he liked to think his daughter was smiling. The rest of that night felt like a dream. The kind of dream you never want to wake up from. He played 3 more songs after that first one. Each time he finished, the crowd asked for another. And each time, he found himself saying yes. It was strange. After 22 years of saying no, suddenly yes felt like the most natural word in the world. The little girl stayed by his side the entire time. She sat on that piano bench like it was her throne, watching his every move with amazement. Sometimes, she would try to press a key or two, adding her own little notes to his melodies. He didn't mind. In fact, he loved it. It reminded him of those Sunday mornings so long ago, when the wedding finally ended and guests started heading home. He felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt alive. Not just surviving. Not just going through the motions. Actually, truly alive. His mother hugged him one more time before she left. "I'm proud of you," she said. "And she would be too. You know that, right?" He nodded, unable to speak. He knew exactly who she was talking about. The little girl's mother came to collect her daughter. She was a kind-looking woman with the same curly hair as her child. She thanked him for playing and for being so patient with her daughter. "She hasn't stopped talking about the piano man all night," the mother said with a warm smile. "You made quite an impression on her." He crouched down to say goodbye to the little girl. "Thank you," he said, "for not giving up on me." The little girl grinned. "You're welcome. Will you keep playing now?" He thought about it for a moment. A real, honest moment. "Yes," he said, "I think I will." She clapped her hands together. "Good, because you're really, really good. And my grandma was right. You do make people cry. The good kind." She gave him a quick hug, then ran off to join her mother. He watched them walk away into the night, and he felt something warm spread through his chest. Hope. That's what it was. He had almost forgotten what hope felt like. He drove home that night with the windows down and the cool air on his face. For the first time in years, he didn't turn on the radio. He didn't need noise to fill the silence. The silence wasn't scary anymore. It was peaceful. When he got back to his small apartment, he sat down on his couch and just breathed. His fingers were sore from playing. His eyes were tired from crying. But his heart felt fuller than it had in 22 years. He looked around his apartment. It was plain and simple. Just the basics. A couch, a table, a bed, a small kitchen. Nothing personal. Nothing that showed who he really was. He had lived like this on purpose. He didn't want reminders. He didn't want memories. But now, looking at this empty space, he realized how lonely it was. How sad. This wasn't a home. It was a hiding place. Maybe it was time to change that dot. The next morning, he did something he never thought he would do. He went online and started looking at pianos. His heart raced as he scrolled through the options. Uprights, grands, digital, acoustic. So many choices. So many possibilities. He found a small music shop about an hour away from his town. They had a used upright piano for sale. Nothing fancy. Just a simple, well-maintained instrument that needed a new home. He drove there that same day. The shop owner was an older gentleman with white hair and kind eyes. He showed him the piano and let him play a few notes to test it out. "You've got talent," the shop owner said, watching him. "I can tell just from how you touch the keys." "Have you been playing long?" He smiled sadly. "I used to. A long time ago. I'm just getting started again." The shop owner nodded like he understood. Music has a way of finding us when we need it most. Welcome back. He bought the piano that day and had it delivered to his apartment. When the movers brought it in and set it up against the wall, he just stood there staring at it for a long time. It looked so out of place in his plain little home. A beautiful thing surrounded by emptiness. But it wouldn't be empty for long. Over the next few weeks, something incredible happened. Word about his performance at the wedding started to spread. Someone had recorded his playing on their phone. Not the whole thing, just the last song and the standing ovation that followed. They posted it online with a simple caption about a mystery man who hadn't played piano in over 20 years and moved an entire wedding to tears. The video went viral. Within days. It had been viewed by hundreds of thousands of people, then millions. Comments poured in from all over the world. People said they cried watching it. They said it touched their hearts. They said they could feel the emotion in every note. News outlets picked up the story. Reporters wanted to interview him. Music producers reached out with offers. Everyone wanted to know who this mystery piano man was. He turned down most of the attention. He wasn't interested in fame. He wasn't interested in money. That wasn't why he had played. He had played for himself. For the little girl? For his daughter. But he did agree to one interview. A small local newspaper wanted to do a story about him. He figured it was the least he could do. Maybe his story could help someone else who was struggling. Maybe it could show them that it's never too late to start again. The article came out a few weeks later. It told his story simply and honestly. The gift he had as a young man, the daughter he lost, the 22 years of silence, and the little girl at a wedding who helped him find his way back to the music. After the article was published, something beautiful happened. He started getting letters, real handwritten letters from people all over the country. They told him their own stories of loss and grief. They told him how his video had inspired them to pick up old hobbies, reconnect with family, face their fears. They thanked him for showing them that healing was possible. He read every single letter, and he cried over many of them. Good tears this time, tears of connection, tears of gratitude. Months passed. His apartment slowly transformed from a hiding place into a real home. He hung pictures on the walls. He bought plants. He started cooking real meals instead of just heating up frozen dinners. And every Sunday morning, without fail, he sat down at his piano and played. Sometimes he played for an hour, sometimes for 3. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he was playing. What mattered was that he was honoring his daughter's memory in the best way he knew. How the little girl from the wedding sent him a drawing a few months later. Her mother had tracked down his address through his cousin. The drawing showed a stick figure man sitting at a piano with a smaller stick figure girl beside him. At the top, in wobbly crayon letters, it said, "The Piano Man and Me." He framed it and hung it right above his piano. Every time he looked at it, he smiled. A year later, he started teaching piano lessons to kids in his neighborhood, free of charge. He didn't need the money. He just wanted to share his gift with others. He wanted to pass on what he had learned. He wanted to help other young fingers discover the magic of music. His first student was a shy 7-year-old boy who reminded him of himself at that age, quiet, curious, hungry to learn. Is it hard? The boy asked during their first lesson. He thought about the question, thought about everything he had been through, all the pain, all the loss, all the years of silence, and then all the healing, all the hope, all the music that had come back into his life. Sometimes, he said honestly, but the hard things are usually the most worth doing. The boy nodded and placed his small fingers on the keys. And somewhere, watching from above, a little girl who never got to grow up smiled down at her father. He was finally playing again, and that was pure magic.